Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu, dan saudara-saudara sekalian. Puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan Yang Maha Kuasa, bahwa kita diberi kesempatan dan kesehatan untuk berkumpul bersama secara virtual hari ini untuk menambah ilmu dan wawasan kita semua. Sebelumnya kami atas nama VTI mengucapkan terima kasih banyak atas kehadiran Bapak-Bapak dan Ibu-Ibu, perwakilan kementerian dan lembaga tinggi negara, badan usaha milik negara, kalangan perusahaan swasta, dan juga Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu, kalangan akademik. Atau Organization Performance Management adalah hal yang sangat kritikal dalam pengukuran metode kinerja. Dan pada siang hari ini, kita akan menelaah lebih lanjut mengenai hal ini. Metode Objective Key and Result, atau yang dikenal dengan istilah OKR, adalah salah satu metode pengukuran manajemen kinerja organisasi yang pertama kali dipopulerkan oleh Google, yang masih pada saat itu berbentuk startup pada tahun 1999. Metode ini memiliki andil besar terhadap perkembangan inovasi dan bisnis Google, dan akhirnya diadopsi oleh berbagai perusahaan rintisan di dunia. Tujuan yang ingin dicapai bersifat kualitatif dan SMART, yaitu specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, dan time-bound. OKR telah membantu manajemen dan para stakeholder tidak hanya mengidentifikasikan target, gaps, dan matriks KPI, namun juga menyediakan arah atau direction bagaimana kita mencapai target tersebut. Pada siang hari ini, kita beruntung berdapat narasumber kita, Miss Alina Mirtoyo dari KPI Institute, dan juga Dr. Hari Patria sebagai Member of Indonesia Strategic Management Society, akan membahas lebih dalam mengenai bagaimana metode OKR dapat membantu perusahaan untuk menghadapi tantangan tersebut. Adapun agenda kita siang ini akan dibagi menjadi 3 sesi utama, yang masing-masing akan mempunyai sesi tanya-jawab tersendiri. Kami harapkan partisipasi aktif Bapak-Bapak dan Ibu-Ibu pada sesi tanya-jawab ini dan dapat disampaikan pertanyaannya melalui chat. Sebelum acara dimulai, kami ingin memperkenalkan para pembicara kita, dimulai dari Dr. Hari Patria. Beliau adalah praktisi bisnis dan data yang berpengalaman lebih dari 13 tahun di industri migas, energi, dan manufacture, baik di badan usaha milik negara ataupun perusahaan multinasional diantaranya Tetra Pak, SKK Migas, PGN, El Nusa, dan saat ini berkarir sebagai Vice President Corporate Planning and Business Development di PT Berdikari Persero, Badan Usaha Milik Negara, Klaster Pangan. Beliau menyelesaikan pendidikan teknik kimia, baik bachelor dan master, serta ekonomi dan bisnis baik dari ITB dan UI dengan predikat lulusan terbaik dan tercepat tahun 2015. Selain bekerja full-time sebagai menjadi konsultan dan data machine learning untuk penyusunan dashboard analytics di berbagai klien, diantaranya PGN, Telkom, Semen Indonesia, Indexstat, Paragon Technology, menjadi founder of Ganesha X Machine and Learning and Community untuk mengkampanyekan tips dan triks aplikasi data untuk transformasi bisnis dan strategi. Dr. Hari Patria aktif mengajar dan menjadi dosen pembimbing di 3 universitas terkemuka, yaitu SBM MBA ITB, Magister Akuntansi UI, dan Magister Manajemen Teknologi ITS, dengan mata kuliah Bisnis Strategi, Data Science, Big Data Analytics, Predictive Analytics, dan Machine Learning. Dan pembicara kita yang satunya, Miss Alina Mirtoyo, merupakan perwakilan dari KPI Institute. KPI Institute sendiri adalah lembaga penelitian global terkemuka yang berspesialisasi di dalam kinerja bisnis. KPI Institute menjalankan program penelitian di dalam 12 domain praktik mulai dari strategi hingga KPI, termasuk kinerja karyawan, dan layanan pelanggan hingga kinerja inovasi. KPI Institute juga menerbitkan berbagai publikasi melalui platform pengetahuan yang tersedia bagi para anggotanya. KPI Institute saat ini dianggap sebagai pemegang otoritas global dalam hal penelitian dan pendidikan Key Performance Indicator. KPI Institute lah yang pertama kali mengembangkan kerangka kerja manajemen KPI dan menjalankan platform www.smartkpis.com. Hasil dari program penelitian yang ini didedikasikan untuk mendokumentasikan dan membuat katalog bagaimana KPI dapat digunakan dalam praktiknya. Sebuah portal online yang berisi koleksi terbesar dari berbagai contoh KPI. Dan Alina sendiri adalah merupakan senior manajemen konsultan di KPI Institute, khusus juga sebagai product manager dari OKR. Oke, demikianlah acara ini akan segera kita mulai. Kami persilakan Dr. Hari untuk memberikan insight-nya.
Terima kasih, Mas Rinto, moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Pertama, saya menyampaikan terima kasih atas inisiatif dari Indonesia Strategic Management Society, kemudian Visi Transformasi Indonesia, VTI, dan juga KPI Institute atas terselenggaranya acara yang berbahagia ini. Kali ini saya akan membahas singkat saja ya sebagai bridging nanti ke Alina ya terkait dengan performance management. Bagaimana kita ketahui performance management merupakan salah satu bagian yang paling strategis di korporasi, baik dari top management, middle management, dan juga dari sisi frontline, dalam rangka memastikan kinerja yang kita capai dan kita desain itu sesuai dengan tren di industri ya, dan juga dengan visi dari organisasi. Perkembangan terbaru, kita bisa melihat bahwasannya performance management itu memberikan berbagai alternatif ya. Dan kita bisa melihat bahwasannya terdapat berbagai shifting ya paradigma dari sifatnya sebagai quantitative indicators ini juga menjelma menjadi transformational indicators. Bagaimana kita ketahui bahwasanya traditional management ini sangat terkait dengan KPI, Key Performance Indicators. Ya. Dan biasanya di dalam industri itu kita menyusun KPI itu merupakan bagian dari top management, sehingga dari sisi sense of belongings ketika discascading menjadi level middle management atau frontline. Nah, di sini yang menjadi isu ya. Jadi terkait dengan sense of ownership dari middle management dan juga frontline. Dan berbagai riset menunjukkan ya performance management ini berkembang ya tidak hanya untuk menyediakan memprovide measures atau indicators, tapi bagaimana kita bisa memprovide direction ya to achieve the goals. Nah, hal inilah yang dilakukan oleh John Doerr di Google ya. Bagaimana OKR ya, Objective and Key Result itu memprovide direction ya. Tidak hanya sebagai measure tapi dia goals dan direction. Sehingga middle management, top management dan seluruh lapisan manajemen itu bisa memberikan arahan bagaimana mencapai tujuan yang lebih taktikal di lapangan. Ya. Saya ingin membahas sedikit lagi terkait dengan survei yang dilakukan Cognology di dalam mendesain effective performance management. Ya, there will be the biggest enemies. Ya. And the first and foremost is limited and absent benchmarking. Ya. So more than 58% of the respondents confirm that mereka itu ya bermasalah terkait dengan absennya benchmarking. Ya. Dan kita bisa melihat ya kondisi saat ini, misalkan di holding BUMN gitu ya, itu kan kita melakukan mergers bisnis ya, kemudian korporasi ada strategic corporate action, dan pada saat dilakukan streamlining ya terkait dengan value creation, maka KPI dan juga OKR ini menjadi complementary tools ya. Jadi KPI itu menjelaskan indicators, sementara OKR ini memprovide ya itu direction how to achieve the KPI. Ya. Dan selanjutnya isu kedua terkait dengan management of position ya. Karena sifatnya itu biasanya top down, ya, maka sense of belonging dari level middle atau frontline itu berbeda dengan yang mendesain, ya, yang memiliki vision terkait dengan KPI. Nah, oleh karena itu biasanya pada saat melakukan eksekusi di lapangan, maka kita harus, ya, we are going to deal with the organizational silos, ya, the stickiness, kemudian juga organizational readiness, sehingga change management itu menjadi satu yang isu strategik ya di lapangan. Dan selanjutnya saya ingin membahas ya terkait dengan misconception antara KPI dengan OKR. Jadi OKR mungkin nanti dijelaskan oleh Alina, ini sifatnya merupakan complementary yang bisa kita jadikan hybrid dengan KPI. Ya, jadi misconception about performance management is just indicator like KPI instead of direction and goals. And as matter of fact, the direction equip us with a strategic way to achieve that goals. And later on, the challenge on the change management. And I believe that in all organization, yeah, without a change management, OKR or even KPI does not work properly, right? And implementation of OKR for some time is too high for small enterprise. And when it comes to like a small medium enterprise, yeah, we need to exercise the affordability for the small enterprise. So sometimes people say that we don't need OKR because we are small. But this is the strategic issues, yeah, how we are the strategic practitioners, yeah, deal with these situations, yeah, how to design the OKR like unlike the KPI, dan kita bisa melakukan ini juga biasanya di rintisan ya. Jadi perusahaan-perusahaan rintisan di Indonesia belakangan itu mulai menggunakan OKR ya, dan OKR ini digunakan itu di berbagai fungsi lini-lini terkecil ya untuk mencapai tujuan yang taktikal ya. Jadi fungsional dan taktikal sehingga secara agregat itu akan mempercepat pencapaian KPI ya. Nah, kira-kira itu yang bisa saya bahas ya. Dan last but not least ya, sekali lagi performance management sudah bertransformasi ya dari sifatnya hanya sebagai transactional indicators ya sebagai bagian dari appraisal, tapi menjadi transformational goals and direction ya. Jadi bagaimana kita melakukan perubahan ya dan sifatnya itu lebih dinamis karena dia tidak hanya disusun dalam bentuk 1 tahun ya, tapi dia menjadi semacam project charter. Jadi kita bisa membagi itu dalam semester, kemudian kuartal, monthly, maupun dia dalam bentuk task assignment. Selanjutnya, salah satu karakteristik dari OKR itu adanya vision di sana. Jadi goals yang ditekankan ini terkait dengan visi dari satu project team ya, kemudian satu divisi ya, dan itu sangat berbeda nanti ya itu dengan KPI, dan ini memberikan sebuah alternatif ya bagaimana tim di lapangan bisa mentranslasi KPI itu menjadi bagian-bagian terkecil dari OKR ya. Baik, selanjutnya later on Miss Alina will be presenting about the KPI in detail, and I believe that all of you will be pleased to invite Alina for this presentation. And Alina comes from the KPI Institute, who is responsible for the KPI designing, the proposing, and optimizing KPI in organization. All right, Alina, time is yours.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure meeting you. And thank you, Harry and Rinto, for presenting me. I'm just quickly going to share my screen for everyone to be able to see it. So today we're going to discuss about, obviously, OKRs and how OKRs feed into executing the strategy and sustaining our organizational growth. We will start by introducing the OKR system in a bit more details and trying to understand its components. We will then discuss about the difference between OKRs and traditional performance management system in more details. And in the third session, I will share with you the process of OKR setting, OKR implementation, as well as alignment. And I will also share with you some tips and tricks that we've learned throughout the years. In terms of the OKR system, it basically uh, tries a lot to share your vision and your strategy as an organization with the reality of this organization. Um, every company has a strategy, every company has a vision, especially even if they don't have a more detailed strategy. It states usually where the organization wants to be, the way this organization will look in the future, or better said, what is this desirable future for them. However, a lot of companies struggle with making sure the desirable future becomes a reality. And especially when your vision uses a lot of lofty statements, such as, we want to become the number one, we want to be the best in class, we want to empower organizations to do something. These don't easily translate into operational terms that provide useful guides to action at a tactical or operational level. Transforming this vision or the strategy into operational objectives is usually perceived as a challenge, especially since a study done a few years back by Robert Kaplan shows that 95% of the employees are not able to name the top objectives of our company. This is concerning since its underlying message is that our employees are not able and don't even know why they do what they do at the tactical level. They cannot assess their value and they cannot see their value and their contribution to the overall organizational development outside of their purely operational metrics or their purely tasks. Translating the strategy into a hands-on or into more hands-on objectives and ensuring that everyone that is part of the organization understands the strategy, can align to it. Uh, it's one of the main purposes of the OKR system. Now, let's take it step by step and first understand where the system came from and how it's currently used in the organizational environment. I know most of you have probably heard about OKRs because they were endorsed by Google in 2013. But actually, OKRs have been around for quite a while. They were developed in the 70s by Andrew Grove at Intel while he was a president there. And they started as a new evolved version of management by objectives. So the baseline and the basics are still management by objectives, but of course with certain improvements. John Dower, who learned about the OKR framework while working at Intel under Andrew Grove, became an advisor at Google in 1999 and introduced the system to Google founders. Of course, the OKR framework is still used at Google today, but a lot of other companies, IT companies especially, have credited their success to OKRs. However, once Google released a video that I was mentioning in 2013 about their success with OKRs, more companies, even outside of the IT industry, started um, to become interested in this, especially because right now we all work in an agile environment. We will have to manage a lot of changes coming from the internal or the external environment. It has attracted interest, and we have been working with companies that are in industries such as mining, healthcare, or even governmental entities. Um, Discussing about the OKRs and just trying to define the OKR system. Of course, every practitioner, I would say, has its own definition about OKRs. And as we have mentioned above, it derives from management by objective. It aims at creating that link with the vision and the reality of the or the operational side of your organization, but it also wants to make sure it's a flexible tool that enhances collaboration within the organization. Now, what this means is that the OKRs usually require a very, very frequent feedback or check-in meetings, usually weekly or bi-weekly. This is to be as agile as possible, take fast decisions, and make sure we're not prolonging the time in which we get feedback from our employees or from the actual operations. And it is collaborative because it relies on on a cross-functional alignment, and making sure companies or parts of the companies don't work in silos anymore, but work together. This is facilitated one by, of course, discussing together as departments that work in an interdependent manner, and secondly, by sharing our OKRs. So transparency and making everything transparent from the top of the organization, meaning the corporate level, up until the newest employee, is one way of ensuring this collaboration. This way, everyone sees your OKRs, everyone is aware of what the other ones are doing, and if we are going into the same direction or not. OKR methodology is not used, and I know this probably goes somehow against what you know about performance management. It should not be used to manage individual performance. It should be used to make sure we have growth and we deliver. So we shouldn't link any type of appraisals or bonuses or incentives to achieving our OKRs. Since we said the OKRs want to ensure growth, of course, this means going beyond our comfort zone, trying to reach more than we would have in a normal setting or in a traditional setting. So linking the bonuses will probably demotivate our employees to try new things. Um, and against expectations, there is still a shared DNA between the OKR system and other frameworks, more traditional ones such as the balanced scorecard. They both focus on improvement. They both focus on certain metrics or measures. KPIs and OKRs did not really invent metrics. Metrics are at the basics of every measurement system. So, of course, there will be some similarities in this area. However, what sets them apart is the cadence, and it's also the execution, which we will be tackling in our third session, and just making sure you understand a bit how we need to set correct OKRs. Now, as the name goes, of course, we have two main elements. One is the objective, and the other one is the key result. Usually, the framework or the OKR framework recommends to have between 3 to 5 objectives and 3 to 5 key results for each one of the objectives. I say a recommendation and not a rule because a lot can be taken into account just to make sure just to make sure we have the correct number of objectives or key results. We once worked with a company that required everyone to have 5 objectives and 5 key results. While this worked very well at the top, where you have multiple objectives, when we reached the individual level, where everyone had a particular type of activity to deliver, it was very, very hard to reach the required number. The OKR simply became just another way for another name for the task list. And make sure that your OKRs are really give a purpose to everyone. not necessarily to have a particular number. Think about the complexity of the work. Think about what has to be done for achieving the OKRs. If you work, for example, in data entry, this is a very simple process, and it's something that it's very repetitive in nature. So it's very hard for such a person or such a department to have 5 objectives and 5 key results. This will mean they will have to struggle even to reach 3 objectives. On the other hand, if you work in a very dynamic environment, let's say research department or development department, um, they will probably have more OKRs because they're trying a lot of new things. They're experimenting with a lot of areas. So in that case, each one of those experiments can have their own objective. Purely operational objectives might have a lower number of key results, while the number increases with the complexity or the challenge of the objective itself. The resources that you have available could also influence the number of objectives and key results. If we have a lot of resources available, of course, we can do more things, hence have a higher number of objectives. If we have lower resources, if we, let's say, are a startup and we have 3, 5 employees, it's going to be harder to actually focus on a lot of directions. And maybe we choose just to go with one OKR that will become like our North Star. In terms of what you see on this slide, um, we're trying to define what an objective is and what a key result is. So the objective answers to the question, where do I need to go? It's if you want the direction or our destination for the 3 months. The key results are how we know we're getting there. We can even consider them a feedback mechanism on on the success of our objectives. And while it's not normally required by the system, I would encourage you to also have initiatives at this point. One initiative or more for each OKR should basically describe the main projects or activities that will be done in order to achieve the objective. And on our slide is defined by the question, what will I do to get there? Um, if if you look at the image, it's quite descriptive. The objective is our destination here. The key results are the flags measuring the progress and making sure that I reach my objective, while the car is the actual initiative. It's what we have to do to reach a particular destination. Um, the OKR methodology challenges the organization, the department, or even an individual to stretch as much as they can to achieve more than they would have in a normal situation. Hence, the OKR methodology encourages you to have stretched objectives. These stretched objectives, or as Google calls them, ambitious objectives, can be done or achieved through 2 different ways. First of all, I can have a very innovative or ambitious objective statement and want to achieve something very challenging. Or if the objective is something along the lines of business as usual, I can actually stretch the targets. So make the targets more challenging. Giving you a very basic example, if our objective is to find a cure for, let's say, COVID, since we're all facing that now, this would be a challenging objective in itself. But if my objective as a business is to increase the production of, let's say, we're producing pens, then in that case, it's a business as usual objective. However, I can make it more challenging by saying instead of 100 pens, I want to achieve or I want to increase the production to 200 pens per day. That will definitely require some adaptations and will become more challenging. In terms of the objectives, they should also be directional. So what we want from the objectives in the OKR methodology is to show us very clearly, very easy, the direction that we need to take. Of course, in accordance to our strategy, as we've mentioned earlier. It's recommended for the objectives to be very easy to understand, as well as time bound. Now, a difference between the OKR methodology and the SMART methodology comes especially from the achievable and the realistic part. Yes, the objectives should still be specific as long as they give you a purpose. They should still be time bound, but unlike the SMART methodology, all our objectives should have a 3 months period, and they are also measurable through our key results. However, we just mentioned the objective shouldn't really be achievable, but should be ambitious, and should be harder for us to be to achieve them, as well as they shouldn't be realistic. They should be challenging. So that would be the difference between OKRs, the objectives of the OKR methodology, and the objective of the SMART methodology. Another difference is that in SMART methodology, we have only one measurement for each objective, while we've just mentioned that in the OKR framework, we have the multiple key results, 3 to 5. In terms of the, let's say, the reality and more realistic approach, of course, not all of our objectives can actually be stretched. Otherwise, everyone will focus on finding new ways and will forget about what they actually have to do. And maybe we will start achieving business as usual in the let's say in making sure we achieve more innovative or more challenging ideas. Hence, we need to have a balance. And I think balance is a very important word here for the OKRs. We need to have a balance between aspirational OKRs, the ones that the theory also calls moonshots, and the more committed OKRs or the roof shots. The aspirational ones um, are very inspirational. If you go back to what I've mentioned earlier, finding a cure for COVID, that is inspirational, of course. Still, they have to be possible and credible. They usually have a higher risk because you don't have a clear path on how to achieve it. It's something new, it's something innovative, and you will probably have to readjust a lot of times in order to actually achieve the objective. These are the objectives that you as a company want to brag about. These are the ones that create impact outside of our day-to-day activities or outside of what we have to do. As we said, they're based on innovative concepts or very challenging concepts. In reverse, the committed OKRs are the ones probably all of us already know. They're more operational, they're linked with our responsibilities or day to day activities. These are the ones that we should achieve 100% because it's possible and because they are accompanied by clear actions. Going back to my pen example, if I'm a pen manufacturer and I want to increase production, that would be more committed for me because it's something production, it's something that my employees do daily. It's something that they have a clear processes for. It's something that they have the equipment necessary, so it should be much easier to achieve. um, in a normal environmental setting, I would probably say that you have every quarter one aspirational OKR, while the rest would be more committed. That is because, of course, we can't focus only on growth and aspiration, but forgetting completely on what we have to do. But remember, we said even the committed ones or the business as usual ones can become stretched by increasing the target and making them more challenging. Um, to somehow feed into this, there is also the idea that if we have stretched OKRs, we should not be expecting 100% achievement. So the OKRs usually say 70 is the new 100. That is because if we have challenging OKRs, most likely, and as we said, they need readjustments, most probably we won't be able to achieve them 100% by the end of the quarter. Numbers in the OKR system, they're more or less recommendations. So of course, if you achieve 75%, it's not going to be bad. If you achieve 60 something percent, again, it's not going to be that big of a problem. But numbers should be taken in context with what was actually achieved. So we worked a couple of years back with a governmental entity that had a procurement department. Now, public procurement is highly regulated. They have a lot of rules, regulations, laws, and the whole team kept saying it's very hard for us to find OKRs that give us a purpose because we can't actually improve anything. We can't do anything but our processes as per the law. And this was common to the entire team. However, at one point, one of the ladies came and said, I want to take an individual OKR because I've seen that they work a lot pen and paper, and I think we should be implementing a software. So her OKR became to help make their work more productive by implementing that software. Of course, the rest of the team would easily achieve 100% because they only focused on business as usual. This lady would probably have a lot of troubles with getting the approvals, making sure everything is according to the plan. So most likely she would achieve lower than 100%. If you think in terms of value, however, she would be the one bringing more value to the organization. So that's why I'm saying numbers are just a recommendation and they're just a guideline, but they're not really what matters. What matters is creating value and doing things better than before. In terms of the key results for our objectives, because we kept talking about objectives, but I think the key results are also very important. There is no technique, there is no right or wrong in setting the key results. Actually, Andrew Grove wasn't even paying that much attention to the key results themselves as he was focusing on the objective. However, I have drafted 3 main questions that your key results should answer to. First of all, we need to make sure that our key results are linked back to the objective and they show us something about our objectives and they link back to this. Secondly, we want to measure the end result or the outcomes. We don't want to focus on tasks. We don't want to focus on, let's say, process metrics. We want to see the end results. And thirdly, we want to see the key result as a measurable expression. Now, just to get an example here, and for you to see what I mean, if the objective is to become an employer of choice, and I chose this one because a lot of studies have shown that in 2021, this is probably the top objective of most companies. And from what we've experienced so far, probably 90% of our clients from this year had this as an objective. In order to become an employer of choice, we need to do certain things. We need to make sure our employees are satisfied with the work environment, they feel empowered, they feel part of the environment. We need to have a good company culture, flexible, employee-oriented. We need to offer great benefits, or we need to offer, let's say, development opportunities. But these in themselves, they're not key results, because if you look at them, they're not measurable, and they don't really link to an end result. They link to a part of the process. So potential good key results here would be for your employees to have a very high engagement level, because this means you are a good employer. They like the environment, they like the company, they feel part of the company. Another one would be, for example, to have a high score on Glassdoor, or different companies that are similar. Or you can have a measurement of how many of your candidates are referred to by your employees. You wouldn't really, let's say, ask someone to be part of an organization if you yourself don't like it. So this is basically the the key result. It's the end result, it's measurable, and it definitely links back with our objective being an employer of choice. And as we said, the initiatives are normally the actions or the projects that we do to make sure we achieve the OKRs. And here we're referring to improvement projects. We don't talk about uh, normal projects of your organization. So if you were project-based, you would have the projects for your clients, and then you would have internal projects linked back to your OKRs. This is just to summarize a bit. The objective qualitative shows the direction, gives us a purpose, and usually should be ambitious. The key result is the feedback mechanism. It has to be measurable. It has to be impact oriented, or the end result. It's difficult, but not impossible. While the key result is inside our circle of influence and it's activity oriented. Thank you very much for listening to this session. And I think it's time to hear your questions and try to discuss based on that.
Yep. It was a great insight, yeah, Miss Alina. We are here really enjoy watching your presentation on how to optimize the performance management, yeah, through the OKR as part of the modern performance management. And you already simply explained the role of objective and key result beyond the process metrics. And here are, yeah, to drill down our discussion, here are some questions from audience. Let me translate.
Please.
Dari Yanti Hamidi. The first question, how to implement OKR outside the project-based activities? And she said that, in fact, the OKR is commonly applied for the project basis.
I didn't really, I'm sorry, Harry, maybe can you mute yourself because I hear myself as well. So what I said is that in the project-based company, there will be a difference between the projects, the common projects of your organization, and the projects you do for improving on your OKRs. But I think OKRs can be implemented in all of the organizations. And as I was mentioning before, we worked with governmental entities, we worked with mining companies, which normally have a very, very strict process. So the OKRs can actually be implemented in almost every environment, and they are conducive to change as long as you want to change the mindset. In a non-project based organization, I think you would probably have a more structured approach for the implementation itself. So for example, you won't have OKRs for each one of your projects, but you would have OKRs aligned at departmental level to the corporate ones. So that would be the difference. You will have departmental OKRs, not project OKRs. But it definitely, they have to be aligned the same way. So your project OKRs can be aligned somehow to the strategy and as well as your departmental ones. I hope this answers the question.
Great. Okay. Next to the second question from Pak Andus from the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise. The question is, how do we integrate, yeah, the KPI and OKR in the same time, and
This
how to do the optimal cascading and alignment between those tools?
Okay, this is a question for my second and my third session. I will actually answer that when we get there. So if it's okay with you, I would like to keep keep it for the sections later on.
Okay, great. Maybe for the last question, next question.
Please.
Okay. Yeah. From the Pak Morgan, based on your expertise, which method is more effective in keeping track of employees' performance, KPI or OKR?
I would have to ask here, what does employee performance mean to you? Is it, um, let's say, the normal appraisal in which we sit down with the employee and we look whether they achieved all of their objectives 100% or not? So the traditional way, or we want to see the value that our employees bring to the organization? Because, of course, if we consider employee performance management as how we offer bonuses and promotions, I would say the easiest way is definitely with the KPIs because they're straightforward, they're linked with their job descriptions, they're not subjective, they're not personal. Um, on the other hand, if you don't necessarily want to base the bonuses on a particular number and you don't want to focus on number but on value and again contribution, I would say the OKRs, but no link with the bonuses or the incentives in this case. So I do agree that OKRs would bring a bigger challenge when we have to design our bonus and incentive system, because we shouldn't really take them or their particular achievement, let's say 70 or 100 or 60% achievement, in direct link with the bonuses. And we have to see the value of those and somehow in an objective manner link it with the recognition and bonuses.
Great. All right. To the next question, I will be discussing more about the implementation of the the OKR and the state-owned enterprise or the government institutions. So the question from Fano Siregar, are there any state-owned enterprise or government institution, yeah, that have implemented the OKR? And from the existing experience, what are the challenges? And considering that KPI is one of the measuring tools in measuring organizational and individual performance, especially in providing incentives in many state-owned enterprise.
um, I would have to answer again by saying let's keep it for the setting part because I already
All right.
have some challenges in setting OKRs to discuss with you.
All right. Okay. So the next question from the energy. Yeah. And you also see on the in the chat box. Based on your expertise and experience, could you share any example on a company where department-specific OKR overlap or maybe underlap the company OKR and successfully overcome situation?
I'm sorry, your line just dropped for a second and I couldn't really hear.
Okay, let me repeat again. Based on your expertise and experience, could you share any example on a company where department-specific OKR overlap or maybe underlap the company OKR and how to overcome that situation?
Um, so that situation definitely has to be overcome by having a proper alignment process and by ensuring the alignment is done correctly with following the approaches. But when it comes to overlapping, I would say this is a problem with how the company OKRs were set. Probably they were just considering one department alone instead of looking at the company as a whole. And this is definitely one of the things you would like to make sure doesn't happen. When it comes to underlap the company OKR, I think here we refer to a misalignment in what the department does and what the company does. This is a case that is very and easily happening, and that's also because the departments have their own specific responsibilities outside of the OKRs of the company, and for those, they can create an OKR or two. So it's not a problem. The one with overlapping, I would say we need to avoid it as much as possible. And we need to avoid having a departmental view at the corporate level. But with having, let's say, departmental OKRs that are not 100% aligned with the company is not wrong, as long as our departmental OKRs still help us do our job. And let me give you an example here because I'm mostly referring um, to support functions. If you have, let's say, internal IT, procurement, HR, and any other support functions, let's say legal, normally you're not going to have OKRs to which they can align directly at the corporate because the corporate ones will focus on your core business. However, by just doing their job, by making sure they hire good people, making sure your systems, your technological systems work, making sure all your contracts are correctly done and designed, they will help the organization achieve its core businesses as well. So this one with misalignments, let's say, you can have, especially when it comes to support functions, and they're not wrong.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the explanation, Ms. Alina. And the last question. Yeah. Uh, Many audience would like to know more on the implementation of OKR beyond the startup or the tech industries. Yeah.
Mhm.
And from the one of the questions by Pak Roni Jaya Winangun, could you explain any best practice of OKR, yeah, that be implemented in higher education institution?
Well, the OKR system is not really dependent on your industry. You can be a higher education institution, you can be healthcare institution, you can be government. They are much more dependent on culture. If you have the right culture as an organization, if you have a very flexible attitude, a more decentralized chain of command, if your uh, culture is to empower everyone rather than control your employees, then you have a good starting point to implement OKRs. I wouldn't make this connection with OKRs and different type of industries, because within industry you can have, or let's say within the higher education industry, you can have very different organizations. If you look, let's say, at schools in Finland or in Canada, you would see a very big difference between schools in more traditional countries. And even here in Romania, we have a much more formal education system and much more formalized. So, depending on the organization itself, depending on how flexible and how growth oriented it is, I would say that's what matters. And the best practices on OKR implementation we'll discuss in our third session.
Excellent. Yeah, it was a great discussion on session one. Again, thank you for lots of insight and your explanations. Okay, we are moving forward to the next session, session two. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Harry, for your help with translating and helping me with the questions. Now,
Anytime.
our second session will be answering some of your questions, which is the differences between the OKRs and more traditional management system. And I've seen in comments someone saying there is not that big of a difference between OKRs and more traditional systems, such as the balanced scorecard. And from a measurement perspective, I would say I can agree with that. From a measurement perspective, you would have objectives. You have objectives in the balanced scorecard. You have key results. You have KPIs in the balanced scorecard. So that's um, I can agree with it. As we've mentioned in the beginning, the biggest difference is not really the measurement part, but it is what the system helps you with. It's the purpose of the system itself, and it's also how we implement it and the cadence and the execution. Now, um, from a definition standpoint, we have OKRs or objectives and key results that we've defined as an agile or quarterly goal setting framework that is used for connecting the strategy with the operational levels and usually focuses on challenging objectives, which is not the case in traditional performance management system. It focuses on aspirational objective and key results that focus on value, or as we said, outcome or end result. The progress for OKRs is usually reported weekly or bi-weekly, while the OKR's relevance is evaluated on a quarterly basis. With a traditional performance management system, this refers to the framework used to define corporate strategic objectives and KPIs that are cascaded up until the individual level, so operational and individual. With the OKRs, we don't cascade, we align, and we have a more bottom-up approach. I'll explain the bottom-up approach when we go to setting, because this is usually understood a bit, I would say, wrongly. Um, and going back to the traditional performance management system, the KPIs are reported quarterly or monthly at strategic and operational levels, while for employees, you assess them either biannually or annually in the appraisal process. So, as you see, OKR is much more agile, much more, it has a shorter time span, which helps you adapt. While with a traditional management system, you need to, most of the times, you wait 1 year to change your KPIs. And I have seen a lot of companies in practice that don't change their KPIs on a yearly basis. And they keep the same KPIs for few years in a row. Although, of course, as you all know, probably the environment changed, our organization changed or evolved from that moment. So we keep measuring the same thing, although our internal or external context is very different. Now, of course, factual differences is that OKRs focus on actual results, while the traditional performance management system would focus on numbers as an indication of performance. So remember, we said numbers in the OKRs don't necessarily mean that we are performing or not, because we need to put them in context with what was actually achieved. OKRs measure improvements or aspirations as their main point, so the growth that we were mentioning in the title, while performance management system that is more traditional measures business as usual, ongoing processes, or the responsibilities on different projects. OKRs are used to motivate, inspire, collaborate. They're used to basically make sure everyone is given a purpose, while KPIs are traditionally used for control. So if you've done your KPIs, I'm going to check it, and if you haven't achieved the 100%, then or a particular level, then we will have an action plan on how to improve, and ultimately you will be seen as an underperformer. The OKRs, we said, rely on challenging objectives or targets, while the traditional performance management system relies only on realistic and achievable objectives and targets. So objectives are business as usual, targets are very realistic. OKR, by having that very short time span, facilitates feedback and collaboration, and KPIs, on the other hand, facilitate sometimes a reward and punishment mindset, as well as working in silos, because every department has their own KPIs and they don't necessarily align cross-functional, they only align to the top. In the OKR framework, we've mentioned we use a bottom-up and cross-functional alignment to capitalize on the contribution and ideas from the employees or departments, while traditional performance management system uses a top-down approach and the cascading process. The OKRs are a bit more decentralized in nature, so we have this, let's say, these sub-processes such as data submission, such as defining the OKRs as decentralized as possible, while the traditional performance management system employs a very centralized approach, just to make sure everyone focuses on the main processes and activities. And you usually have someone designated officially to get the data, to analyze it, to even cascade the KPIs, or at least make sure the KPIs are cascaded correctly. In terms of similarities, I think we've already mentioned that both OKRs and more traditional performance management systems should be measurable through the key results or the KPIs. They are used at every organizational level. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because there is an idea in practice that OKRs are more employee related while KPIs are more strategic related. And that's not correct. Both can be implemented at every level and both are linked back to the strategy. And in terms of the key results and the KPIs, they both support the achievement of an objective, such as someone was mentioning in the comments at one point. Now, to answer your other question, can OKRs and KPIs work together? And I would say yes, they can. And we can also create some hybrid systems with OKRs and KPIs. Now, I will start by saying that if you've been using KPIs or balanced scorecard before, it doesn't mean that you're going to throw away all your KPIs, to stop looking at them and implement new OKRs. What I'm saying is that your core processes and certain core expectations that you have are still going to be there regardless what system you're using. And if in my X balance scorecard, I'm going to still, let's say I had something along the lines of revenue or profit at corporate level, that most probably is still going to be kept for the OKRs. As a business, I still want to make sure I achieve a certain revenue or profitability rate. So that is the example we can take from the existing KPIs and still transform it into OKRs. In terms of departments, as we've mentioned earlier, the production department, if I need to produce pens, I will probably have an objective around that regardless what system I'm using. And if I had a improving the production or increasing the production objective in the balance scorecard, I can still take that into the OKRs. The OKRs are meant for working alone as well. So their main purpose is not really to help you achieve only certain KPIs, but for companies that still want to have a lot of control on top, having a hybrid system with KPIs at the corporate level and OKRs at the operational level that somehow feed into your KPIs can still work. And this is the first hybrid system you see mentioned here. So we use KPIs on top, which are very realistic and give us the baseline or the expectations of the corporate for all of the departments. But we drive the achievement of those KPIs with OKRs that are more aspirational. In this case, what you will see is probably the fact that our KPIs are still going to be achieved or even surpassed by employing OKRs at the bottom. Here, it can be the reverse. And we could say, why not have OKRs on top and KPIs at the bottom? Well, this is simple because it doesn't work in practice. If you have very realistic measures at the bottom, and if you have business as usual measurements, just as per the responsibilities or job description if you're an individual, but you have challenging objectives on top, you will basically have one part of the company focusing on challenges and the ones that actually work focusing on their own job. So nobody's going to work to achieve the challenging or aspirational objectives of the corporate because at the lower level, they will be focused on what they have to do. And we have been implementing another hybrid system, which seem to be very, I would say, seem to be very, very good and actually worked very well in practice, which is having KPIs and balanced scorecard for performance purposes, for that control that we were mentioning earlier. But at lower levels, so let's say either team or departmental or individual level, we can also use OKRs. Of course, we're not going to have a lot of OKRs, probably only one per quarter, but this will show the extra value. The KPIs will monitor your business as usual. The OKRs will monitor what you do extra. And this is especially in companies in which everyone does a lot of other things outside of the job description. And that's the first time we implemented it. It was in an IT related company that wanted to have balanced scorecard, as we said, for performance monitoring purposes, but they also wanted to have OKRs at individual level. That is because their IT people were doing much more than what was in their job description. And I like this story because one of the gentlemen in the team had an OKR his objective was to help the newcomers in the team. They didn't really have this idea of, let's say, a buddy system or someone that will help you in the team with processes, getting ready and working towards what you have to work. They usually had an induction session of 1 or 2 days, and then your manager was supposed to show you around to the team, tell you a bit of the processes, and then you were all alone. So this guy had the objective as his OKRs, it was not from his job description, to help the newcomers. And a few months later, the company actually looked at the impact of the OKRs for the team, and they realized that the newcomers were much faster becoming productive and efficient, starting with when he had this objective. Because they had a helping hand, they knew who to go when they had a problem, and they had a lot of support. So that was very important for them to adjust and adapt very fast to the processes. And I think if you don't want to lose a lot of control, but you still want to benefit from some of the OKR benefits, this would be a great way to go. This would be something that can actually help you implement KPIs and balance scorecard for business as usual or procedures, and OKRs at team or individual level to help with the innovative or value added part. Um, I um, I think it's time to start our Q&A session again.
Oke, saya akan membantu mengenai memandu sesi kedua. Sebelumnya saya akan memastikan dulu tadi pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang sudah disampaikan dan dinyatakan akan dijawab di sesi kedua, apakah sudah terjawab, Pak Pandega? Kalau memang belum, silahkan saja dinyalakan mikrofonnya, kemudian bisa ditanyakan langsung, boleh bahasa Inggris atau bahasa Indonesia akan saya coba terjemahkan. Kepada mungkin Pak Pandega dulu yang nama pertanyaannya tadi agak di atas mengenai there's a question about based on our expertise dan experience. Apakah sudah terjawab Pak Pandega?
Selamat sore Pak Rinto, sudah cukup terjawab tadi. Alina, also thank you for the answers from the first session for Q&A.
Do you have any further question based on your first question?
Up until now, I'm satisfied with the answers. Let's see the rest of the sessions. Hopefully, I have another questions for you.
Okay, thank you. Because the next seksi berikutnya bakal mengenai challenge dan tips ya. Jadi kalau ada pertanyaan mengenai itu bisa tahan dulu sampai sesi berikutnya. Buat Ibu Ambar Tribawono, bagaimana Bu? Apakah sudah terjawab atau masih ada yang ingin dipertajam lagi dari pertanyaannya?
Pak.
Oh maaf, saya kebanyakan teman saya Ambar itu ibu.
Siap.
Maaf Pak Ambar.
Ya,
silakan Pak Ambar.
Ya, sudah cukup Pak. Ada satu pertanyaan lagi Pak, itu di
silakan.
bawah. Udah di chatting ya. Kalau Google nih bahasa Indonesia aja mungkin kali Pak ya.
Ya nggak apa-apa.
Ketika kita bilang targetnya itu tidak realistik, Google itu bagaimana ya cara manage reward and benefit-nya ya kalau pakai OKR saja? Mungkin itu aja Pak.
Okay. So Alina, the question is about how Google implemented the rewards to its employees when the target itself is not realistic.
Well, as far as I know, again, as I was saying, Google is looking at the value of your OKRs, not at the target. Of course, they have various ways of implementing that. But my recommendation from practice for all of you would be to take into consideration your own companies and forget about Google that did if you're not Google. I know with the OKRs, everyone is trying to copy paste or implement what Google did. But if you guys are not Google, and if you don't have a company that is very similar to Google, I would recommend to discuss your options, of course, with a rewards and benefits specialist that can assess your own context and your own company and design a bonus and reward system, especially for you. I think, and again, I know this is a question coming from a lot of people, but I think if we really want to implement OKRs properly, we need to devise them from the bonus and performance related incentives, and we need to focus on value, and we need to focus on collaboration. So I see that most of your questions are related to bonuses and incentives and so on. But
Yes.
honestly, that's not the point. If you focus on that, probably OKRs are not a good solution for the culture right now in the organization. And again, I would recommend to go with a hybrid system than implement an incentivized system based on that. For example, if you look at the CEO of Google, he was the one inventing Chrome and popularizing Chrome. So he became CEO. Ultimately, he was recognized for his efforts and the value that he created in Google. But it wasn't because he achieved his OKR 100%, but it was more related to what he achieving that OKR, which was creating Google, really did for Google as an organization. And what was the benefit for the entire organization because he achieved that OKR. It wasn't about achieving it 100%, but it was more about how this helped Google as an organization. And it was also about seeing him involved, seeing that he has ideas, that he is innovative, and that he is an active member of the organization. So that's how, for example, the promotion went. It wasn't because 100% achievement. But
So it
yeah, please
So,
read.
Alina, it's so more towards to achieve the target itself because you stretch the target. That's the purpose of OKR more towards rather than for
It's
setting
not
up
about the
the
target.
reward system and the bonus system or incentive itself. Yeah.
Yes, to a certain extent, but I would also
Okay.
say it's not about the target or the 100% achievement.
Okay.
Because, for example, going back to what I said about the pens, if so far we achieved 10 pens, and that's what we were able to produce per day, but we try to stretch and we say we want to put the target at 20. Now, maybe we don't achieve 20, but even if we go from 10 to 15, that would be a big leap for us and a big, let's say, a big value for the organization. So it's not about 100% achievement, but it's about, can we do more than this? Can we stretch and add additional value or do something extra, basically? So it's not about the target itself, but it's about doing more than you would do in a normal setting.
Oke, bagaimana Pak Ambar? Ini juga sekaligus mungkin menjawab pertanyaan Pak Robi ya, karena memang it's for a different purpose untuk tujuan yang berbeda. Apakah sudah cukup jelas atau ada yang masih mau ditanyakan? Saya beri ke Pak Ambar dulu lagi sebagai penanya tadi.
Sudah Pak, mungkin sudah cukup.
Sudah cukup, oke. Bagaimana dengan Pak Robi?
Sudah Pak, sudah cukup.
Sudah cukup ya. Oke, sekarang pertanyaan. Now the next question is, mudah-mudahan saya benar, ini Ibu Yanis Susanti ya. Alina, the question is, so far from her experience, she read some article that OKR will be more effective to be implemented if supported by some software to get better result from every measurement of performance, teamwork, or division. So should the company prepare an extra budget or cost for this initiative beside employees' expense? What is KPI Institute recommendation?
Well, have you read that from a software company? Because usually that would be the recommendation for sure. Depending on your company, if you have a small company, let's say 10, 20, 50 employees, you can very well manage this into an Excel file. I don't think a software would really do anything for you if you don't have the basics correctly. You can have the best OKR software there is, but with no benefits if your OKRs are not correctly implemented. So I think the way we work with OKRs is actually what matters. Rinto, can you please mute yourself a bit because I can hear myself twice? Thank you. So it's much more important to have the basics covered. And of course, the software will make it easier and less time consuming, but you still need to have the workshops. We still need to have the setting part done correctly in order to have something to write in that software. Again, software helps you with visibility, helps you with managing everything, makes things much easier. But it does not mean that having a software makes you better at working with OKRs. If you don't have the theoretical and framework related fundamentals. And by you, I mean the entire organization. In terms of softwares, we have tested quite a few of them from the market, and I've been in contact with few providers. But I would say probably you you need to test them as well and see which one works for you. There are quite a few OKR softwares out there, but each one of them offers a specific thing or offers different help. So maybe you want to see a bit what they can do for you and how they can help you. But I wouldn't prioritize software on having a good foundation of the framework itself. And just to give you an example, I worked with a governmental entity a few years back. They had around 300 employees, and their minister said, "We're going to start pen and paper." Obviously, he was meaning Excel, not actual pen and paper, um, because I want them to take time and be conscious about their OKRs rather than having a software sending them reminders. I want them to learn the process. I want them to learn the writing the objectives and the key results correctly before we implement the software, and the software will be much easier for them. That's a fact, because they send you reminders, they help you maybe with some examples, and it's easier. But if you really want to have the fundamentals, I would recommend to start few quarters without the software. If we're talking about a very big company, I'd say 300 plus, then maybe you should consider a software just to make things easier in terms of having an overview on the OKRs. But other than that, still start by being conscious about your OKRs and the setting mechanism.
Bagaimana Bu Yanis? Oke. Masih ke mute Bu Yanis? Ya, silakan Bu Yanis.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Alina, for your clear explanation.
My pleasure. Thank you for your question. And thank you all for your questions and your involvement.
There's one more, there's someone raising hand. Pak Josi Suryadinata, silakan Pak Josi.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Alina. Just wondering if you have to set up the objective for human capital or HR, because mostly of the CEO, they will all ask saying that your OKR is not ambitious enough because recruitment is your job and everything is your job. So how do you set up human capital or HR OKR? Any examples for that?
Okay, so I think, again, the OKRs depend a lot on your strategy, but the way to set it is to look at your, I would say, responsibilities as a HR, but also try to link it with what the organization wants to achieve. So, for example, if the organization wants to open a new I don't know, to open a new part of your organization in another city, or to increase very much your people, or if they focus on the talent management, for that, of course, you will have different objectives, but you still need to take into consideration what you have to do rather than setting objectives that are not yours. And here, if you can help with corporate objectives, a way to do that is to align to them. So say if my organization wants to focus on talent development, that would be me who have to achieve this. But if my organization wants to, let's say, wants to build the world's best pen, me as an HR, I can't do that. But what I can do is help train everyone to become better at what they do. I have another example of how HR has set OKRs outside of their main responsibilities, but to help the organization. And this was an IT organization that developed an HR related software. So what the HR said is, we can help with sales because we are in the HR, let's say, business. We know a lot of HR specialists. We have a lot of networking in the area, and we can help promote this. It's not my core responsibility as an HR, but it's something I can do because I have the network and I have the resources. So in that case, they would help more the organization than focus on their responsibilities. But I think we should not mistake the OKRs with us only doing things outside of our responsibilities. It has to be a balance between what we have to do and what we can do to grow or to enhance our company or our processes. It always has to be a balance. Not all of your objectives should come from business as usual, but some of them ultimately would come. And this is having a realistic approach, not an idealistic one. You can't just focus on growing, improving, innovative ideas, because at the end of the day, who will do the work?
Okay, so basically we can also see the increments or the improvement of the process, right? Like
yes.
I'm saying, like they can see the process as well, like what they've done from previous and then after, something like that. That could be
Absolutely.
Also kind of okay. Thanks a lot, Alina.
Sure thing. So, Rinto, should I go on, or do we still have any questions?
We have one more question, just confirmation basically from Ibu Firna Puspasetiorini. It's about OKR, so it is more connecting with qualities than quantities. So you need to confirm about that from your confirmation.
I would say yes, because again, we look at the quality of our key results and what they bring to us and their contribution to the overall company, then the numbers or the achievement of particular numbers. So I think it does make sense. But again, remember, the key results should be measurable at the end of the day. So I should also be able to put some numbers to that, but the numbers don't matter that much as in the traditional performance management system.
Bagaimana Ibu Firna? Bisa lanjut ke sesi berikutnya atau ada yang masih mau dikonfirmasi lagi? Okay. Baik.
I think I should have learned Bahasa before.
Yeah. That's not difficult. So, okay, carry on, Alina. You can continue with the next session then.
Okay. So, our next and last session is about setting and aligning OKRs. And I have also prepared for you some tips and tricks that we do in practice for ensuring a correct implementation. First of all, let's look at the OKR lifecycle. We already said the lifecycle is 3 months. And I think I've seen in the comments a question earlier about what happens if we have longer term objectives? And this is something I would like to address here. If you have a 1 year long objective that you simply cannot, or it doesn't make sense to split into shorter term objectives, because at the end of the day, your destination should be in 1 year. I would recommend you to have the year-long objective, but have quarterly key results. So even though my objective is I want to, I don't know, enhance talent or become the employer of choice by the end of 2021, my key results should say which are the results for the first quarter on this objective, which are the results on the second quarter for this objective, and so on. And in terms of life cycle, it's important to have an updated strategy. Even if we create it or review it in the beginning of the OKR implementation, having the right strategy, the right ultimate destination in mind, it's critical. This first step will only happen every year. So you will start by reviewing your strategy when you implement OKRs, but you won't do it every quarter. You will review it at the end of the year. As a second step, we start with corporate OKRs. I know you're going to ask me now, this is not this is not bottom-up approach, this is top-down. Well, we're going to start with the corporate because those are the ones giving us the direction. The corporate OKRs are the ones telling us what we need to achieve as a corporate in the next 3 months. Without that direction, at departmental, team, or individual level, we can't really link directly with the strategy. So if you want the corporate OKRs, translate the strategy into the quarter and makes it easier for us to align to it. But we still need to have the bottom-up alignment. And that means what we're going to do after the corporate is to have a workshop with every department in which the question is not going to be how can we cascade the corporate OKRs, but how can we as a department contribute to the corporate OKRs. And that is a shift in mindset, and that is a shift in how we set OKRs. Because what I would say is, me as a department, I can contribute with this, and I'm going to write OKRs on that. But I will not just simply cascade and copy paste all my OKRs from the corporate. So this is what bottom up really means. Not starting in mind with what can I copy paste, but starting with how can I contribute. Bottom up alignment, I know most of the times is understood as we start setting OKRs from the bottom. And that in reality is going to create an anarchy, especially if you have a structured organization. Because what it means is I'm giving a free hand to all my employees or teams to say what they would like to do. And that's not really what should happen in practice. I still need to have a purpose and a common direction. Think about this as if you were asked now to write some OKRs for you without having guidance from the upper levels. You would write probably whatever comes to mind without having a clear view on what you really need to do or what are the priorities of the company. So that's why we still start with the corporate. In regards to the third step, I would highly recommend to companies that were used to work in silos, especially, and companies that do not have a collaboration or that do not have collaboration as part of their culture, to set up interdepartmental alignment meetings. So basically, put in one room all the departments that should work together. Let's say you have HR and you have sales and marketing and partnerships. Put them together. Make sure they have the same direction. And that's mainly for them to realize. It's not, remember, it has to be a bit more decentralized. So it's not for you to do anything as a company, just to facilitate a meeting. Thinking about the example. So we have a sales team that has OKRs to focus on entering a new market. Let's say entering the market in Asia. So the sales team will work on leads and clients coming from Asia. And then you have the marketing team that would say, well, I want to see and test the Europe market. And all of their campaigns will focus on the Europe market. Of course, there is a big misalignment here because these two teams should be focusing on the same market and should be working together to make sure they have the best results. So that's somehow what I mean here. And because this is not something that is traditionally done, I would recommend to you to have this alignment meeting facilitated or created for all the departments, at least in the first quarter. After that, of course, we go to team and individual OKRs. Again, all of them I recommend to do in workshops, not really having an individual one-on-one, because that will take a long time for the managers. And that's going to put additional pressure on the direct managers to meet with every single one of their employees to set up the OKRs. So I encourage you to do that as a workshop or team meeting in which everyone gets the chance to write their OKRs and discuss them with their team and their manager right then. The last part of the process is the check-ins, which we said are usually weekly or bi-weekly, and the end of the quarter review meeting. And then, of course, we'll start with the second step, not really with the first one. In terms of who does what, because I think the governance is also important in the setting part. Top management should be involved in helping create and review corporate OKRs, as well as guide their direct, the departments they directly link with. But it's not their role to implement the OKR system just to be part of it. Of course, what is important to have from the top management is support, and for them to make sure they say and they get the buy-in of everyone, they say the importance of this system, and they basically walk the talk. In terms of implementation of the OKR system, you need to have a dedicated team, either at the corporate level, or you can have OKR champions at different departments, but make sure they have an integrated strategy. So performance office, strategy team, OKR specialist, OKR champions, however you want to call them, this team should be in charge with designing the implementation plan, implementing the OKRs, supervising, facilitating workshops, and make sure they pass on the knowledge about the OKRs. Head of the departments and middle management has a critical role in the implementation because they are the ones that understand the strategy and understand the OKRs created here at the top, and they communicate it to their teams. Also, they have direct access to their employees. And if your direct manager comes and says, well, the corporate wants these OKRs, let's just do them very fast and get on with them, because it's not something that we're going to work on just to make corporate happy. I'm pretty sure every person in that team will not have the right mindset and involvement on the OKR system because they know their line manager couldn't care less. However, if the manager comes and sells this to their teams, there will be another situation, and the employees would be more engaged and they would try to do their best. Now, of course, at the employee level, you need to update the results, you need to make sure you align your OKRs and you participate to the OKR setting of the team. And the department heads support their employees, participate in aligning the OKRs at the team level, and review the results of the employees. In terms of, and I know I have to end very soon, so I'll just say a few words. In terms of the setting of the OKRs, we need to take into account 3 different things. So departmental or organizational strategy and OKRs, basically the upper level, our core responsibilities and projects, and our own aspirations. And here, remember what we said, that if we can contribute with something, even if it's not directly linked with our job description, we can take that as our value-adding OKR. Of course, we already mentioned the alignment has to be top-down, bottom-up, and cross-functional in the same time. We focus on outcomes. We don't focus on tasks. We want to be ambitious with our OKRs, and we also need to prioritize very well, because we only get around 3 to 5 objectives. So in our OKRs, we should only be able to see what is a priority for us rather than everything that we have to do. In terms of common pitfalls when setting OKRs, I think subjectivity of everyone involved is one of them, especially when we talk about the targets. Because whatever is challenging for me, maybe it's not challenging for you, and the other way around. So we need to take into account the subjectivity of everyone involved. And as a recommendation here, I would say in the first few quarters, don't start with individual OKRs. Keep them team level, because that makes things not as personal and reduces the subjectivity level. Once everyone is used to working with OKRs, you can go into the individual level. Other issues that I've seen is listing unimportant tasks instead of key results, or just creating OKRs as a task list, not having measurable key results. And again, this one usually is because they list tasks rather than the result of those activities. Having OKRs that have a fancy language, but it's not understood by the entire company. And the recommendation here is make sure you write them easily and concise so everyone can understand what you work on. Continuous, ongoing quarter-to-quarter OKRs that have no growth. And what I mean here is that if in the first quarter we have to create 10 pens, then in the second quarter, if I keep pen creation there, maybe I would like to have 13. I don't want to have 10 again. So not have the same target over and over again, because it means I'm not focused on growth. I'm just focused on measurement and tracking rather than growth. And I think OKRs that are not challenging enough, this was already mentioned under the subjectivity part. In terms of the alignment, as a definition, alignment is the process through which we ensure all our employees' efforts, all our resources, all our activities are helping the organizational strategy. And the 4 different approaches are: 1, taking the same objective or the same key results as the upper level if it makes sense. So don't force this one here. If it doesn't make sense, or if, for example, you have the same objective as the corporate, you don't have to change just for the sake of changing. And I think this is linking back to the question of one of our participants that asked, what happens if we have duplicates? Well, if the corporate objective links directly to me, I can take it. Let's say we are a newcomer on the market. If my objective is to establish myself on the market and I am sales and marketing, maybe I can still keep the objective, but with more specific key results. Or even with one same key result, if let's say they expect from us a particular revenue, I can keep revenue as a key result. But one, don't force it. If you are the one doing that, then you can still have it as an OKR. Having lower level OKRs that are specific to you but support a higher level. For example, if we, and this is an example from Save the Children. Their mission is to empower children and achieve long-lasting changes in their lives. How we do that? An objective could be through ensure access to education. But if you work in the partnership department, you won't be able to offer direct education access. But a specific objective for you would be to create partnerships with schools in the region that you work, to make sure the other departments can enroll children to those schools and offer access to education. I think I was mentioning in the question Josie had earlier, you can have OKRs that are specific to your functions or your aspirations that don't really connect directly with the top. Or there's another one used in practice. Higher level key results can become objectives for the lower levels. Here, I would say, remember that you shouldn't choose one of these alignment approaches, but there should be a mix between them. So don't just say, I'll choose the last one and use it across the organization, or don't just say, I'll choose the first one or the second one. It's going to be a mix depending on the situation, depending on the level of the organization, and again, keep it balanced. And the last thing that I want to say is, for a proper implementation, I think I've mentioned earlier that culture is important. Having an open culture, having a flexible culture, having a culture that is safe to failure or not achieving a particular OKR, and a leadership culture rather than management or control would ensure a proper implementation because it gives you the right mindset. Appetite for innovation, not fear for change. This is what I would say here. Ensure the organizational readiness. And this is important because a lot of companies start implementing OKRs without even mentioning the name OKR to their employees. We were once invited to work with a company, and when I got there, the CEO invited us to a town hall where he first announced about OKRs and about our engagement. Now imagine everyone was unprepared, they were scared, they didn't know what to expect, they didn't know what's going to happen. So ensuring this readiness by communication and getting the buy-in would be great before starting the implementation. Then make sure you don't forget about the regular feedback. OKRs without the regular feedback and flexibility and fast decision making, they're not going to work. Because I say in theory that I want to be flexible, but I don't change anything in practice. So regular feedback is a driver for making OKRs work. Renounce to the control-oriented mindset and think about working together and empowering everyone. And don't follow the rules or don't follow all the rules. You need to customize any system, and not talking about OKRs alone. If you want to implement balanced scorecard, if you want to implement whatever, you have to customize it for your own company. So going back to my answer earlier, if you're not Google, don't implement OKRs like Google and think about your organization. And I know I exceeded the time a bit, but that's it from my side. These are some of the tips that I have from our implementations and from our experience with implementing OKRs that I wanted to share with you. I'm sorry, Rinto, for messing up the schedule.
It's okay. It means that a lot of interest and a lot of curiosity about how the OKR implemented and how it's going to be hybrid and then aligned with the existing performance management implementation. It's good. So, is there any ada pertanyaan lain kah? Okay. This is another question from Ibu Yani Susanti. Is it okay for a digital startup company that has just started their business if they want to imitate the performance indicator of a company that already go international, such as Google or Netflix, in setting their measurements variables regarding to the lack of experience that the startup company has?
Absolutely not. If you don't have the same strategy as that company, and I'm sure you don't because you have very different development stages, then I would say don't. You can look at what they're doing, you can look at how they grew, you can look at how they developed, but don't. This is a very personal system. But and this is even with balanced scorecard. They need to be linked with your strategy as it is now and your purpose as an organization. Maybe you can have one or two key results that are similar and one objective that is similar, but make sure you personalize and individualize this as a startup. I would recommend have a meeting with your team. I assume it's not a big team if you're a startup, and discuss with them what your purpose should be for the next year, and then drill it down into quarters. But don't focus on copy pasting, because again, if you're not Google, don't act like Google, and think about your company, your development stage, and who you are as an organization. It's important to know your identity and what sets you apart from Google or Netflix or any of those big companies. And that's something you can show through the OKRs.
Okay, gimana Mbak Yanis? Okay, the follow-up question is, even though they make a little difference inside it?
Even though, again, you cannot have the purpose of another organization. You need to have your own purpose. You need to say in the OKRs what sets you apart, what you're going to do different, what or where you want to be as an organization. Again, maybe one objective will fit, or one key result or two key results will fit. But copy pasting what other people are doing or just making a small difference will not be personalized to you. And even when it comes to individuals, you can have two different people with the same job description that have a very different OKR. And I'll give you my example. I'm not the only senior consultant in our company, but every one of us, depending on our interest, depending on our area, depending on us as an individual and where we see ourselves in the company, we have different OKRs. For example, one of my OKR was to develop the OKR products and to help marketing them. My colleagues, on the other hand, somebody was focused on balanced scorecard products. Someone was focused on enhancing the current products. So we had different objectives, although we are part of the same team. Depending on who we are as a person, even when dealing with clients, we have different OKRs. Because maybe for me, it's important to have a lot of interaction. For another person, customer satisfaction would be enough. So what we see as our end result is very, very different. And that's why if it's like this at an individual level, at a company level that have very different strategies, differences will be even bigger.
Bagaimana, Bu Yanis? Oke. Ada lagi sebelum saya tutup? Menarik sekali partisipasinya. Dan tentu saja kalau masih tetap ada pertanyaan lagi, masih boleh lebih lanjut untuk menghubungi info@visittransformasi.id. Kalau memang sudah tidak ada pertanyaan lagi, terima kasih banyak atas partisipasi Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu sekalian dalam Serial Learning Organization Performance Management webinar. Banyak respons yang menarik. Sayangnya waktu kita terbatas. Jika ada pertanyaan lanjutan mengenai OKR, certification information, atau konsultasi, bisa menghubungi kami di info@visittransformasi.id. Kami harap kita bisa berjumpa pada webinar berikutnya. On behalf of Visi Transformasi Indonesia and the KPI Institute, we will close this session. Thank you, Ms. Alina, and all your participation again. Please stay healthy, safe, and success.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rinto, for
Thank you.
helping me with
Thank you.
with Bahasa.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Alina. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone, for
you.
your questions. It was a pleasure, and hope to keep in touch.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Enjoy your
Thank
day.
Bye.
Yo.
Thank you, Miss Ellen.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih semua. Terima kasih.